Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on social media at Galen Trombley. I hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Please hold for a very important message. Light speed sequence initiated. How may I help you?
Bonjour.
Security breach.
The truth shall set you free. Awesome. It's a miracle.
Stabilizing. 3, 2, 1. Mission complete.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Okay, welcome everybody. Episode 269. This is my first ever podcast, actually podcasting not in my podcast studio. If you guys, actually, I lied. I did do a podcast years ago. We went to Yvonne. I did hers up in Saranac Lake, and that might have been my only travel podcast. I'm not far. I'm actually at my house, but just because of scheduling and we're doing this remotely, I figured this would be perfect. So my guest today is Luke Basso. Luke, I'm going to let you kind of dive in a little bit more to your title, but I'm just going to give you a quick little background. So, Luke is, professional title you put down YouTuber, which I was checking out your YouTube, and it's pretty cool. But you interview veterans, basically from World War II to modern day. Based on what I've seen, it looks like it's a lot of, kind of one camera on them. You're talking to them, they're talking back to you. Kind of, definitely more of them talking and telling stories. But you sound like someone that loves military history, American history. I'm sure a bunch of other history because you wrote that down a bunch of times in interviewing people. So for people that don't know who you are, kind of give us a background. What do you do? Go into your YouTube channel and kind of, I guess, how you got into starting this whole project.
Well, okay, for context, the relevance here, I used to live in Shazy from 2016 to 2023, when for 5th grade until 11th grade. And then during my senior year, I moved back to North Carolina, for family and opportunity reasons. I used to live here years ago. But my YouTube channel, I started that at around the end of 2020 to 2021. And I've always taken interest in history, especially military history. And I always liked filmmaking, making videos, and I wanted to combine this all. And it all started, there's this World War II veteran named Doug Brown. I wanted to meet him in late 2020. So there's like a parade for his birthday. So I went there. I met the family, and they said, "Oh, you want to actually meet and have a conversation with him? Come back tomorrow." So I came back tomorrow, and there's 2 cameras set up, and they recorded our whole conversation. I'm thinking, I can do the same thing. I know a lot of veterans, a lot of historical witnesses. Why don't I do the same thing? I've seen a lot of the people do similar stuff, and I've always liked making videos. So I'm like, why not? Why not do the same thing? So it's slowly expanded from there. And it originally started with a lot of the older veterans, like World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. But now I've gotten all sorts of veterans and historical witnesses too, not just veterans. I have a lot of people like Holocaust survivors or victims of communism, all people throughout history, firsthand accounts. And I love what I do. I really do. And I'm continuing to do it in North Carolina. Sorry, I was going on a little tangent there.
That's fine. So Luke, what got you into it? Because obviously, you're how old are you right now?
19. I just
So you got
graduated high
it.
school.
So what are you, 15 probably when you started this?
Yeah,
Just,
yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
check kind of doing the
yeah,
math. So,
15,
um,
16.
yeah, for someone that's in, like 15, I mean, was there anybody that really jumped out, or what really steered you towards the more kind of going the path down history? I mean, I'm assuming you obviously took it in school, but was it beyond that? Did you find you had interest?
I've always loved history, especially military history. Since I was around 8 or 9, I've always had a huge interest in World War II and also the Cold War too. And yeah, I was like, oh yeah, 15 years old when I started my YouTube channel. But it goes beyond just school and just a personal interest. I just like I enjoy this kind of stuff. I really do.
So when you take, but there was nothing you could really pinpoint, just in general, you just kind of fell into it, thought it was interesting.
I think so. I'm because people ask me that question. How'd you get into all this sort of stuff? I was also asked this today too, and I'm trying to think of it's not a cut and dry answer. It's just over time.
It wasn't like a light bulb moment. It just
No, yeah, it just over
evolved.
time it slowly evolved. Yeah.
So what made you want to meet? Was it? And again, I might get the gentleman's name wrong, but you said Doug Brown.
Yes. Oh, he was
So what?
100 years old. He was turning 100 years old, and um, well, that was 4 years ago. I don't know if he's still alive or not. I hope he's still alive. He lives in Peru, New York. He'd be 104 this year. But at the time, well, even now, especially now, there's not many World War II veterans, and
Mhm.
I wanted to meet as many as possible. And this was a first-hand account. I met World War II veterans before. One of my greatest friends is Antonio Gagliardi. He's 99 now. He lives in Plattsburgh. He was at Iwo Jima in Okinawa, and I wanted to meet as many of these World War II veterans before there's none left. They are almost all of them are 100 years old, especially back then. I thought there's not that many then. There's barely any now. It is impossible to find a World War II veteran or even a Korean War veteran. They're only a few years younger.
So okay, so when you ended up, so again, Doug Brown, this was just someone you came across, knew he was turning 100, you had interest, you said that would be cool to meet this gentleman.
Oh yeah,
So, because I was actually doing a search before, and again, take this for what it is, internet, but they said there's about 180 to 200,000 um, World War II veterans left, but they're dying on average 300 a day. So
that's a
it
lot.
says it's about 1.8 years before they're completely wiped out. So realistically, like right now in 2024, having a World War II veteran actually seeing them is you could argue almost like a unicorn. I mean, if you take how many people are in the United States, I mean, realistically, what 320 something mil. So that portion of that, I mean, we're talking very small percentages of people in the world or in the United States still at this time had served in World War II. Um, I mean, I think it's fascinating. Obviously, World War One, there's nobody left, but you keep going down. You and I in our lifetime, we're going to probably see nobody alive from the Vietnam era. You know what I mean? And that's which is, you know, and arguably, I mean, you might even get to the point with, a lot of like Iraqi, the Iraqi freedom and that whole thing. That even could, you might be able to potentially outlive them depending on the year. I mean, yeah, they'd be a little bit older. They're probably a little bit older than me,
A lot of them by now are
40s and
Iraq War,
50s.
Afghanistan. Yeah, they're around the 40s and 50s. They're
Yeah. Yeah, so you got it. Yeah, they have 20, 30 years on you. So I mean, I'm thinking of my age, so I'm like, they're not that much older, but yeah, I mean, you, yes, for sure. So if you look at I guess starting this whole thing, and when you talk about filmmaking, because just meeting them is one thing, wanting to actually film them, wanting to hear their story and record their story, what was the thought behind that? What got, I guess let's go back first. What got you into film, like doing film? Like
well,
what
I've
was
always liked
interested?
making videos. I've always liked all of that. And then when
What,
tying
but what got you into that, like the filmmaking?
I don't remember. I wish I remembered. That was way. This was even. I think this is even before. Or it might have been around the same time I got into history when I was around 9 or 10. But I don't remember. I really don't. It was kind
Okay.
of uh, just came about. But when it came to my channel, um, these are first-hand accounts, and I want to capture them, especially if there's barely any of them left. And also, over time, I noticed too, which I didn't notice at the time, and when I first started, I know it's been doing this for years. I've noticed is when they're on camera. Well, actually, this is the first time they were talked about a lot of times, and there's family members who will sit with me on the interviews. They never even heard these stories before, and this is their
Hmm.
opportunity to say their stories all at once instead of just little bits and pieces throughout their life. And this is probably the only time they ever said it all at once. And surprisingly, a lot of them they want to do this. They really do because no one has listened to them for 3 hours, 2 hours straight. And a lot they keep it in for so many years. Even the ones who don't want to talk about it, they feel they feel like a sense of relief, and it's very therapeutic for especially for the Vietnam veterans how they're treated when they came back. They feel a lot better after they say
Hmm.
these stories because World War II was so different from Vietnam. With World War II veterans, yes, they still have PTSD and it's hard for them to talk about it. But for Vietnam vets, it is way harder to talk about this stuff with them, especially when they came back. They're all spat on, called baby killers, and they had no one to talk about it with because no one wanted
Hmm.
to hear them. And 50 years later, they're given a chance to share their story.
So yeah, because I think you made a good point there. I think a lot of, again, people that I see in the military, a lot of them are very closed off, are very, they kind of, that was in the past, they don't want to talk about it. And I think, you hear these accounts of, this could be your grandfather, this could be, you know, you know, great uncle of yours that does it, and you find out like they might have played a pivotal role, they might have gotten injured, they might have had to kill somebody, might have just saw someone get killed or injured, and it never actually comes out. So, like you said, for these gentlemen are, in their, around 100 years old, and they got their grandkids or their kids or their great grandkids listening, and they're like, I didn't know grandpa did blah 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 blah. And but again, I do think that a lot of them covered up. I mean, have you found, how many have you spoken to roughly? Just
For
to give
World
us
War
some
II
context.
or my
Just
channel.
World War II. We'll keep on World War II for now.
For spoken to or have my channel, because a lot of them who don't want to go on my
I guess
channel.
just spoke either one. That doesn't
Okay,
matter.
spoken to maybe about 50, which is or 40, 50-ish,
Okay.
which is more than I would think actually, because there's barely any of them left. But and I can get a lot of them don't want to go on camera. I understand that, and I still want to meet them either way.
How have you found any type of similarity between the two as to like as to why maybe they don't want to talk about it, or maybe don't want to share? Like you said, some of them don't want to go on camera. Have you ever pinpointed as to why you think that might be?
There's a few reasons. Some of them it can just be just even this goes for a lot of them. They're just camera shy. They don't want to talk
Okay.
about it. And then a lot of them actually don't feel like they did enough. They really didn't. They're like, "Oh, I'm no hero. You don't need to interview me. I didn't do enough." But
Hmm.
and then some of them will say, "Okay, Luke, I'll do one after I get to know them." And then it turns out they're an actual war hero, and they don't feel like they are.
Do you think where do you think that comes from? Because you look at this is something that I think as I've gotten older, and I'm sure if you haven't yet, I think this was something that you might run into. It's you start to kind of think of things more long term, as in you know all the way to death. So like when I say death, not like freak accident, but you live a long, long life and you just naturally pass. You think like over time these people gain, whether this wisdom or they gain this like lack of caring, or they you kind of build up this tolerance. But then you said, hey, I'm talking to a 100-year-old guy that's scared to go on camera, or someone that doesn't feel they did enough from something that happened 80 years ago, but has stayed with them. Because when you look at, I know I'm going on a slight tangent here. If you look at like basically like adolescents or children when they're little, like when they're babies and they learn stuff, they learn a lot when they're very, very young that ends up staying with them all the way to adulthood. So whether that's good, bad, what they call trauma, that could stay with them throughout their entire life, but it was actually something that happened or something that was affected them at a young age. Could be 3, 4, 5 years old, and they don't even know what triggered it, but it's always been that like that thing they shy away from or they're closed off to, and they have never outgrown it. So do you find, is would that be true with some of these guys, that you feel like it's just maybe something you just they've spent 80 years of like almost like a callus built up, like they just you can't really crack it because they've just been so guarded for so long that it's now just
A,
they
a
can't
lot of these
actually come on the other side.
a lot of these veterans, they think about this stuff every day for the rest of their lives, every single day. And there's some of them they try to put it behind them. It just you can't forget this stuff. You can't even and you brought up like people when they're children. I've had like there's one guy sticks out. He's a Holocaust survivor, Stanley Steigman, and he doesn't remember the Holocaust. He was too young to, but he was 4 or 5 when it happened. But all that trauma still he doesn't really remember, but it just everything around him. Seeing those were like
So
his first things he ever saw in his life was people dying and the smell and just terrible. He doesn't remember any stories, but he just remembers vivid stuff as
so he
like
he was
little.
in a concentration
Yes,
camp
he
as
was.
a child.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. How old is that as is he now?
86, I think.
Wow, that's wild. So obviously he's still, I mean, I want scarred to a degree, even though the memory wasn't there.
Yeah, yeah, and he still has nightmares about this stuff, but
Oof.
he doesn't remember what exactly went down. He found out later that the Nazis did medical experiments on him, and he was like 4 or 5 years old.
Wow. Did that have any effect on his development?
He has a lot of pain, I think, in his back and just well, even other parts of his body, and he didn't know
Wow.
for a long time. It's years later he found that out.
So when you just, there's a lot I want to cover, Luke. So I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit here, but um, how do you go about A, finding out who you want to talk to, and then how do you go about actually connecting with these guys or gals? I watched one about the KGB spy. It was a lady that I think was your most watched video. It said like 120,000 people
Oh
watched
no,
it. So
yeah, ex-CIA spy Martha Peterson. That is my most
yeah,
watched video. Yeah.
yeah. So I was actually watching a few minutes of that, and so I mean, how do you go about finding these men and women that are doing that, and you just personally being I want to talk to that lady, and then being able to track her down.
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. No one has really asked that. How do you find these people, or how do you approach them? Uh, each I don't say group of people. Well, I guess group of people they're different. When you approach Vietnam veterans, you have to approach them. It's more of a sensitive subject. World War II, they're more understanding because they're 100 years old, and a lot of them are more like, okay, fine, I'll talk. There's not many of us left. Vietnam vets they more shy away from it. But what they can all agree on is okay. This is a young teenager who wants or who wants to hear our story. We can do this. We're okay talking. We can, for example, let's say if it was like, I don't know, like someone who's like 28, I feel like it's less likely for them to do it. But someone who's young and has been doing this for a while and has a general interest in history, I think that convinces them more than let's say some random journalist who's just doing a story about World War II because it's Veterans Day, not because of they don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you know what I mean by that.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
Um,
being young is on my side. This has helped a lot. Probably about half the things I've done, I've it helped out that I'm saying, hey, I'm a teenager. Well, I'm not anymore. I'm 19, but
mhm.
when I first started this, even when I still now, even still being 19, it helps a lot. And I feel like the older I get, it's going to be more hard to approach these kinds of people.
but like you coming up with them though, it's just
Oh, okay. Oh,
pure.
yeah. Sorry, I forgot to add on to that. So
Okay.
finding them, I just ask everyone, and there's always one. There's always most people say, "Oh, I can't think of anyone." And there's always one person who goes, "Hey, I have someone for you," and he will talk. I'm like, "Really?" They're like, and there's yeah, here's his number. Give him a call. Say who my relation to our relation to
My
each other,
contact,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and so doesn't mean they'll always respond, but there's always a person. Like let's say like one out of like 15 people, they'll have someone that might talk, and sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Other times when I've some of the public figures I had on my channel, I'll just reach out to them on their website, and if they've been interviewed before on like the news or other podcasts, or just if they've written a book, then they're more likely to talk because
Hmm.
if they're
They're already
they've
on record.
yeah they've already made this public, so they're like, yeah, sure, even if it's over Zoom in person. Like Martha Peterson, the ex-CIA spy, she's written a book about this. And I've met some of her. Well, she didn't know. She didn't know until later. Well, during the interview or afterwards. I've met a lot of her ex coworkers. One that was on my channel, that was pretty cool. And when it comes to, or even you did mention the ex KGB spy Jack Barsky. Uh, he's been interviewed maybe 400 times. So he's been he's written a book. He's been on CNN, Fox. He's done talks. He's he's done all sorts of things. So and he's just an example. If they're making themselves public, we like okay. I'll go back. I'm sorry. The Holocaust survivor. The reason I was able to find him, Sammy Steigman, is because he's done a lot of public speaking things, and his whole goal is to teach the youth about the Holocaust. So when he
Mhm.
finds out, I was 18 at the time, that okay, some high school senior wants to talk to him, he's like, sure, I'll do it. So um, it comes down to who it comes down to who I know, my age, and if they're already public speakers, if they're already public figures, then it helps a lot. And even if they haven't written books or they're not, that some of them haven't been on the news and all that, but even if they're just like they're proud, the ones who are like proud to be a veteran and they're proud for their country and they're really patriotic. I feel like they're pretty likely to, and I tell them I love this country. Thank you for your service. I appreciate what you did. They love hearing that, and especially for our Vietnam vets, and they're willing to share those stories a lot more.
So, so when I mean, is there? So, like I said, a lot of it's like 6 degrees of separation, like kind of who they know, kind of going down and getting kind of a lead and following it. Do you have? I guess when you look at interview guests, like I'll take the podcast for an example. So I typically start out with local people. I've started to branch out to people that are outside the area, partly because of, my interests in certain things can't be scratched by someone locally just because smaller area. I also know the level of interviewing can expand by going out, and I really have only kept this as people that I want to talk to, not, there's really no theme, there's no, so like, to me, it's just anybody that comes across that seems interesting. And a lot of it, if you look at the people that I've had on, it's a wide variety of people. Like, I don't think anybody could look at it and say like there's a theme. Like, you only interview these people, and I think that's part of the fun is that I've seen so many people, I've heard so many different uh what's the word, like different viewpoints, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, and it allows me to absorb a lot of this and kind of make me a little bit more well-rounded. I I've used different ways of tracking down people. Obviously some are personal. I know them directly. Some of them are just very much kind of a cold reach out. But typically, I just find something that I have interest in, and then I just reach out to that person or whatever and say, "Hey, it's a no if I don't ask, so I might as well ask." So I guess in regarding that, obviously you have a theme of more kind of the military, um, and historical. What types of people do you like interviewing? Which type of people that you like interviewing and have interviewed, and where do you want to branch into, or is it just like, no, I'm good with like what I'm doing?
Well, I want to make another point of how I find these people you brought up of people who you know. Yeah, a lot of these people on my channel are people I've known even before my channel has started. And after at first, when I told some of them about my channel, they didn't want to be in my channel. Then they found out. Then they actually saw I was actually being serious, and they're like, "Okay, I'll talk to you, Luke." And some of these people I've known for a long time, and um, they just needed a moment when they're ready to share their story. But going on to your current question, I like where my channel is right now, and I do want to expand it. I want to get more foreign veterans. They deserve to have a voice too. I've had a lot of, but it's mostly been American veterans, and I've had a Falklands War veteran and a World War II Canadian veteran. But I want to get other conflicts too, and other points of views too. What I want to do is um, get people in current conflicts like Ukraine and Israel, which it's pretty hard to find them. I can find these people, but it's pretty hard for them to talk, especially that's happening as it's going on, and that's the problem. It's you can find these people, which goes on from my old point of yeah, track down someone. They're not willing to talk, but they're willing to. Well, some of them will talk privately, but they won't be on camera. Like even like Blackwater guys,
Mm,
the mercenary group. I'm pretty sure they have a non-disclosure agreement or
mm,
something, which is why they can't go public. But some of them will talk to you. They will, and I wish they didn't have that agreement because they have all these. They have amazing stories too. And yes, they're a controversial group, and I still want to hear their stories because they were they were they were over in war zones and they were in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places like that. And I just want to get as many points of view as possible. It's not just I do like I said, it's mostly American veterans, but I want to get British veterans on there too. I want to get people like in the Troubles or Falklands War, or even a lot of our. I want to get our allies too, even some of our enemies. Like I said, I got the ex KGB agent on my channel, who I later brought to my school, who we did a interview there. But don't worry, he's on Jack Bart's. He's on our side now. He faked his death
but
and became an
was
FBI
was
spy.
he Russian?
He was born in East Germany, but he was recruited by the KGB, so you know, uh,
Mhm.
Russian influence. But
Yeah.
um,
Now, when you interview people, like what are you trying to elicit from the interview? Do you go in with a specific agenda, something you want to accomplish? Is it pretty free flowing? Do you come with set questions? Like how is it structured? How do you prep for them?
I used to do a select questions, and then I realized no, I'm not going to do that because they only talk about the stuff in the questions. If I improvise it, it goes a lot better because they're saying stuff you didn't expect them to say, and then there's stuff coming into my head of just like, oh, what if I like just on the spot stuff instead of it being staged. Like all my interviews are pre-recorded. The only interview I've done that was live in public was the when I brought the ex KGB agent to my school, and I loved that. That was really fun, and we improvised the whole thing. We had dinner the day before, so and then before we left dinner, I'm like, oh, we didn't talk about the interview, how we're gonna approach this, and he was just like, don't worry about it. I'm like, you sure? And then he's like, yeah, no worry. I'm thinking, he's right. I've done a lot of improv interviews before, just not this. The only difference is that it's public and it's live,
Hmm.
so it shouldn't be that bad. And it wasn't. It went perfectly. It went perfect, and that was. I might. Hopefully, I can do more interviews like that, or in front of groups of people, because I love those sorts of things. If I can think of more guest speakers to have when I go to college, I love to do that and bring some people to do exactly what I did at my high school at Ashley High School in Wilmington, North Carolina.
So, but when you go in for the interview, I mean, do you have, I mean, I guess like when you talk, sit down and talk to somebody, like mine's very open. Like I
Mhm.
just, kind of discussing what you like to talk about and what, whatever you do in this case, obviously, veteran interviews on your channel. But I mean, do you go in to like trying to get a specific story on their background, how they got in? I mean, do you have like repetitive questions that you try to hit every single person with, or?
Each one's usually different. Like I said, I used to have a select bunch of questions, but then I just improv. A lot of them are the same questions I had when I
Mhm.
had those select few questions, but improvising it. Well, obviously we usually start from the beginning and then go in chronological order, and then it just jumps around, and more stuff comes up last second, and then on the spot stuff, and it is way better to, in my opinion, to improvise. Go in with an idea, but don't make it so staged and scripted.
Mhm.
It's kind of like this, but not but more of them talking. I let them talk. I don't even talk 90% of the time. I just let them say whatever they want to say. This is the first time a lot of them have ever said anything about their military career ever, and so I let them talk. They have so much stuff they want to say, which they never got the chance to say. So I let them just talk and talk and talk.
Do you what's the word? Do you kind of point them in a direction, or do you give them any, like when you say I let them talk? Like if I said, like, Luke, give me your background as to how you got into this, and I could pause and you could talk for a while based on, kind of making it however detailed you want. But do you prompt them at all of like, hey, what was, day one like? Do you
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
story from?
Sometimes I go back. Sometimes I go on tangents that are either too long or just not relevant. So I'll kind of
Mhm.
redirect them back into the interview. It
Yep.
happens occasionally, but it's necessary because they don't even mean to do it. Those go on in a story and then they'll forget that they're. I'll redirect them.
No, and do you find that there's a lot of that? Because the only reason I'm saying this, and again, maybe it's a little ageism, but if you're interviewing older people, depending on how often they're in conversation, how often they talk, I wasn't. I was actually expecting maybe the opposite, that they wouldn't give you much to work with, and you'd almost have to really pull it
That
out of
has
them.
happened. That has happened a
Okay.
few times. Yeah. So it can go
But
either. So thinking about it, it could go either way, but
yep,
it doesn't go. It doesn't go as that way. The way you just mentioned as much. It's more the other way.
that they overshare, or I say
Yes.
overshare, but they talk enough where it's like, okay, we're
Yeah,
getting
I'd
content here.
rather them do that than give like. There's been some interviews where they've only given like 5 words per
Yes, and
response.
I've had that on the podcast too, where it's like you ask a question and then the person's like, so they'll answer it. Like I'll be like, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, well, I grew up blah blah here, 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 and they just pause, and I'm like, oh, okay, one of those. So then I end up like, that's why I ended up coming up with this sheet, which I was like asking people
That's
because a
smart.
lot
That's
of
very
times,
smart.
well, and the thing is for me, I look at, and I'm just kind of talking more like interview style because obviously we both kind of do very similar things. Like I look at it, if it's somebody that I know and I can carry on a conversation, this becomes really irrelevant because it's just like you said, it goes with the flow. We go on tangents. It starts off talking about military history. Next thing you know, we're talking about making pizza in I don't know, Italy. So like, but you have these weird things that can go. But then I have had that where it's like great person, nice person, but they can't hold a conversation or they can't build off a conversation. And the problem is with podcasting, the audience can't typically see the people, so they can't see dead space. So even when I'm listening to a podcast and there's like a pause, I like check my phone to see if I hit the pause button. And then someone starts up because they like just pause for like 3, 4 seconds, 5 seconds,
Which can feel
and
like an hour sometimes. It can feel like.
oh, 100%, 100%, especially on audio. So that's why a lot of it is I find that people that can really carry on conversations, they don't allow the dead space to fill in because as soon as, I see an opening or you see an opening, you kind of dive in with either a question or an add-on or a pivot. And again, a lot of guests that come on, if they're not used to speaking, it is a complete, they're learning. It's like training wheels, and they're just kind of like I'm talking, but the camera, the headphones, if they're in studio, like it's intimidating. And I find it always takes people maybe about 20 minutes and they start to settle in a little bit. And then I feel like once you hit like the 30, 40-second mark, then they really settle in and then they just forget where they are and they're just talking.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of them is the first. Even when I've interviewed some of like the World War II veterans on Zoom, they've probably never used Zoom before, and
Hmm.
so talking through a computer screen, this is new to them, and I'm sure they're very confused and probably overwhelmed too. But after about, yeah, I'd say around the same thing, 20 to 30 minutes, they ease into it. A lot of the
Yeah.
times, it's a family member to set up the Zoom call. These guys don't know how to set up Zoom. They're 100 years old.
Yeah.
There's been a few ones who actually do, who are very good with it, and I'm very surprised. I'm like, oh wow, okay, this guy knows how to use Zoom better than me. Wow, it's like one guy, Russell Freeberg. He was a journalist for the not Washington, the Chicago Tribune. He's 101 years old. I'm gonna Zoom call him again. I haven't uploaded my video with him. He fought in the European front during World War II, and then he became a journalist afterwards. I want to interview him again because he had the opportunity of people like Truman, JFK, Ronald Reagan, and all sorts of politicians back in the day. So we went from World War II vet to a journalist, and he has a lot of good stories about the political side of history. So I will interview him again, and he's one example of one World War II vet who knows how to use Zoom.
What, what, like your YouTube channel in general. So what is, um, obviously, I mean, doing a channel, whether it's kind of like a part-time gig or full-time or whatever, like YouTube obviously is a massive platform in the world. How much work goes into your YouTube? How much goes into the editing? How much goes into like the interviews? Do you edit the videos down? Do you cut them? Are you doing a lot with, kind of going down the layers like thumbnails and captions and like how much work do you put into that and how have you tried building up your channel?
Well, yeah, when I first started my channel, I didn't really put thumbnails. I don't know why I didn't. I regret that I didn't. But it wasn't until recently I started making thumbnails. I don't. That's one thing I regret. I don't know why I didn't do that. But yeah, when it comes down to editing, making thumbnails, writing the descriptions, because the description it's like a background knowledge, and then that to go like, oh, I need to rewatch this part to make sure I got this information right, which can take longer than it should. But then I cut it down to maybe 20 to 30 minutes out of the hour and a half I probably spoke with them. Sometimes I'll make part two videos if it's all that good because sometimes they'll say stuff but just not like even just like a simple like 5 second pause can add up because they do that a lot for 100 for 100-year-olds. I can do that a lot. So those can add up and have to
Mhm.
edit those a lot. But it's not. I think I'm just a slow editor because it shouldn't take too long. But I take my time with them. I'm not really a rush with them. I originally wanted to do release one a week, and then other stuff came up that I wasn't able to do that. And then on top of that, it's just hard to find people once a week. So I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
maybe I can do this once a week. I'm like, no, I can't do that. That was unrealistic of me even thinking of that. I have no idea
Mhm.
why I even thought that too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's the cadence. I mean, that was one that and I think I've been doing this almost, well, closing in on 6 years now, and I think I'm still averaging one a week since then. But I hedged some up prior to COVID. I was doing more frequently. Now I'm doing them less frequently. So I would say now I'm probably at maybe one every 2 weeks. Just because same thing, like life happens. You have other priorities, and you have some stuff that's like and you get some that are just they cancel. Like I had like I think 2 weeks ago I was supposed to have one or last week or something, and they canceled. And so I had okay, well now it's 2 weeks to my next one. So there's sometimes logistically just things come up, and things happen that you work around it. But ultimately, I think the consistency is one thing. The editing, I don't edit any of these videos, so I just kind of keep it as long form and as raw as possible because I like that concept. But I see what you're saying. Like if you have some, depending on what the topic is, if there's luckily for most of my interviews, there's never really been a time where there's dead space where I'm like, ooh, I gotta like shorten that up because it's awkward. I also find that I like this is me personally. I like people feeling like they're a fly in the wall in a conversation because and the only reason I do that is because when I listen to podcasts, I like that when people are talking, especially that Rogan, because I know they're in studio. I listen to a lot of other people and they're not often in studio together. But I find that just kind of being like, hey, I'm just sitting at the table listening, not saying anything, and it's entertaining because it's just conversation. Um, I like that. So I think in my what I do or what I don't do, I guess, with not editing is I let those like small things build up, but it's just a style. So like everybody's got a different style in how they do it, and I don't. It's certainly not a correct way because I've seen some that are really produced where they have like the little bells and whistles and they have the cuts and the ad reads and everything else, and I just like it. You know, it's it's just different ways to go about it. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
I think it's cool that regarding the building up of your channel. I mean, you have a pretty sizable following. It's obviously a niche channel, but to go to some of these that you're looking at. I'll have to look at some, but I think when I was looking at your most popular ones, I mean, you had 120,000. I think you had 63,000, 54,000. I mean, you have a handful that are 20,000 plus. Um, is there again, I'm kind of scrolling through some here. Is there any that really stick out where you're like, hey, how did that person get so many people versus someone else? Like, is it just the algorithm of YouTube? Do you do anything special? Is it just the guest, like the lady that was part of the XCIA? Is it just because she's like a known person that if someone was Googling her, she would come up versus maybe someone local that you did that, Doug Brown, who's a local gentleman that probably has less name recognition?
So yeah, when it comes, well, I noticed this: the Vietnam veterans, they get the most views, and I think they're my most
Okay.
active, the most the biggest group of people who are watching my videos are Vietnam veterans, surprisingly. But they're able to watch these videos and relate to a lot of the veterans uh, I interview, especially the Vietnam veterans. They're able to relate and they leave comments. Some of them are people who leave comments on multiple videos. And also, speaking of comments, one thing that does make me sad. Sorry to change the topic. Is so yeah, I'm doing these Vietnam veterans and thousands of people are watching them and um, they're able to relate to this. There's people on the other side too who are still they have so much hate towards Vietnam veterans. There's still people in my comments calling them baby killers or war criminals or just calling them out for just bullshit. There's after 50 years, it's sad to see this stuff happen. And but a lot of my viewers, they're adults. I don't think there's anyone my age besides my friends watching my videos.
Hmm.
Um, but people, I say around 50 to from 50 years old to 70 is most of my age range, and a majority of them, well, not a majority, but a good amount of them are Vietnam veterans or even other veterans too from other conflicts watch my videos.
Do you
And
find that? Oh, sorry. Keep going.
no, I think it's just they're able to relate more. Because
I was gonna.
I think Vietnam veterans are the largest group of veterans out there currently.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would think so.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think so. Still with the number. I mean, do you find that it might be therapeutic for a lot of them to watch it, even if they don't want to talk about it, to hear others talk about it, to say like, I'm not alone. This guy's saying what I feel.
Oh yeah, there's people who type in the comments saying that how much they're able to relate and how familiar it sounds to them
Hmm.
when they were over in Vietnam. You're about to say something before I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, well, that was it. Because I was thinking like a lot of them, like you said, they weren't treated great when they came back, and it's obviously sad to see that that's still carrying over, unfortunately. But when you look at it, it's like a support group for the people that, it's somewhere where they can turn, where they can at least relate. And it's kind of like, hey, I want to talk about it, but I don't have anybody to talk with, and I'm uncomfortable to personally talk about it. But if I can just privately in my house listen to someone else talk about it, it's a way for me to kind of process my thoughts, just with having
Yeah,
like
and they
maybe
can
a
leave
little bit of social.
they can leave a comment anonymously on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's cool because I do find that people, I mean, humans are connective beings. We want to be part of community. We want to be part of social circle, and I mean that's happened just throughout our development over hundreds of thousands of years, and it doesn't go away. Like that's such a tribal instinct or a biological instinct or primal instinct, whatever you want to call it. That's what we yearn for, especially when you have something like that. That's more on the traumatic side. It's not just like, hey, I want to click at school that I can hang out with my buddies. It's like, hey, you guys all went through this massive historical, you know, um, situation that at least in our lifetime was a major event. And I'm sure like most battles throughout history will be forgotten. But it's more than like currently it's a huge deal because people are still living with that, the scar tissue of that, and good or bad, and I think, obviously, I think people coming back and not being, you know, like the military is a funny thing because it's a thankless job. It really is. No matter how much you thank people, it's like you really don't get much in return. I mean, you have I would think I was not in the military, but I would think that any type of satisfaction you get, you got to kind of find within. You got to feel like I felt like I did my job. I felt like I believed in the mission or believed in at least maybe not, you could have disagreed with Vietnam, but you're like, listen, I'm here for the country and I'm stepping up, which is what those people did, even if they were drafted. And I think if you look at, the people that kind of answered that call and went and did that, to me, I even see people in the military now. I'm like, they're way better than I am because I never joined and I never enlisted, and it's just one that for those people that be willing to do that, what they call the ultimate sacrifice. I think that's the problem with where people get caught up in like don't have war. Like I don't want war. I don't think anybody wants war in the world. Do I want a strong military that can protect us? Absolutely. But I also want them like I don't understand when we have war. Like, I mean, I get it in the concept of like why it happens, but it's also in the concept of like, why can't everybody just be chill and like, treat people the way they want to be, like the golden rule. We'd never have conflict. But I know it's unfortunately part of humans just because that's what people aren't all reasonable. Um, but it's taking the idea of war and then the idea of someone that served in war and trying to separate the two because I think too much it gets pulled into like I was against the war. I'm like, that's fine. You can be against the war. These people had a contractual obligation to stand. They volunteered or got drafted or whatever based on the time to be in a position to defend whatever freedom you have now and to not give them thanks for that, even if you disagreed with it. It's like we just had 4th of July. How many people are running around shooting off fireworks and having drinks and playing yard games? And it's like you also got to realize the reason that you're able to, jump on the slip and slide and cook a hot dog and shoot fireworks and go in parades. Like it wasn't, it just doesn't magically happen. And I think that's where that's the thing that always bothers me between, I know it's kind of a rant here, but between those two is like separating the war, like wanting to go to war from the people that served in war, but holding those people up in a regard of like, I mean, I would say, you got to put them up in the, doctor, teacher, like the professions where they're giving back to people. Because I think those are the things that you do, like you don't go into teaching, like you go to help others if you're teaching. Like it's
Right,
not like a
yeah.
teacher's going in. I'm like, I'm going to go teach in front of the classroom to learn. I mean, there is a residual effect of learning, but the teacher's going in to serve someone else. The doctor's going in to fix somebody to make them better. I mean, obviously, I know they get paid and whatever else, but really, at the end of the day, they should be going into it for the idea of like, I'm being of service.
Right,
Like
yeah.
that's like, so I mean, I would say like when people go into the military, I doubt any of these guys go in saying like I just wanted to go in and just kill a bunch of people and like be macho. I'm like they went in because they were trying to protect or they tried to uphold, our
What?
country.
Yeah, they want to go into the ones who wanted to go in. They wanted to serve their country. They wanted to serve the United States, and the ones who
Mm.
are drafted, especially even like the ones who are drafted for any of the wars, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Some of them were a lot of them. Yes, they didn't want to go there, but they wanted to serve their country, and they're proud to do so.
What do you think nationalism back then versus now?
Well, not I wouldn't call it nationalism. I call it more patriotism. We lack
Patriot, yeah,
yeah, national. That's just the
that's an
extreme.
extreme. Yeah, I
Yeah,
should patriotism's a little bit better. Yeah.
yeah. I'm a patriot. I love this country. Which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this. But no, there's not many patriots my age anymore. Even people older than me. Just people don't understand how great this country is. They don't. And talking to these veterans and historical witnesses, you find out how I don't want to say terrible, but well, I guess yeah, terrible some other countries can be. Uh, not their people, but their governments, like communist governments, fascist governments. People don't understand what it's like to live in a free country. But these veterans do, and people, the older generation, even if they weren't, uh, not necessarily people I've interviewed, but just like talking to older generation, older people from older generations, they understand how great this country is. Of course, it's not perfect, and I say the last maybe decade has been, you know, it's been going iffy,
Well, I
but
I think yeah, but I think if you take, I always think of this. I mean, obviously, there's a level of bias because we live here. So I think you have people that have the bias of this is great because it's mine and I live here. I think you also have the people that just want to complain about anything and they say our
Right.
country sucks because, but again, our country sucks because you're focusing on things that you don't like in the only country you've ever known.
And there's
Because you
people
hear
who,
people,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no. So I was saying, like, you hear it all the time, like, well, this country's got this and this country's got that, and fill the blank in whatever country it is. I said, absolutely. I said, they not, I would say most countries have better qualities and the worst qualities primarily. I mean, there's probably a few handful of countries where you're like, you probably don't want to go there. But most countries, I would say, if you interview the people that live there, they would have a fairly positive, like, yeah, because you
Because
live there. Like,
that's all they know. Same with us. That's a lot of people, they never
like
left through, not just the United States, they haven't left their own town or their own
Yeah,
community.
but if you take, and this is what I was saying before, I mean, and again, I don't know the numbers, so I'm just purely speculative and generalizing here. How many people are trying to move to America or have moved to America, and how many people have moved out of America? It
Right.
not as many people are moving out of America. And you could say, and then you hear like if this person gets elected, I'm moving out of the country. I'm like, you're still here. So it doesn't, but and the thing is, it's just more of like a funny like because people make those offhanded comments, and it's like but it's still better even if the person that you like because right now is like a political climate everybody's freaking out over like if you look at politics no matter who wins in the next election the country's still going to be better than
Yeah.
almost every country. And I think that the you take like I'm just going to use LeBron James because it's just kind of analogy. The people that are at the top of something, at the tip top of anything, are the ones that get hit the hardest because they're known. Take the Elon Musk. I'm just going to use LeBron because historically he's the current active. His son gets drafted, and now people are saying, well, it's nepotism. He got drafted because of his dad. Probably. But at the same token, if you take someone like LeBron James, who's had this phenomenal career, who's been in the public eye for 20 plus years, people know him and want to tear him down to the negative people. Now let's go down to the who's the seventh best player in the NBA right now. I don't know who it is, but that person I guarantee you doesn't even the second best player doesn't get nearly like it's a disproportionate. It's like Elon Musk gets way more hate than like Jeff Bezos, and they're 1, 2 in the world in regarding wealth. Elon Musk gets way more hate and just in general, but he's at the tip top. And you could say Bezos, when Bezos was there, you heard Bezos more because if you're going to say the richest person, you usually use
Yeah.
the top
People
person.
hate, people start hating on popular things just because it's
Well,
popular.
and
Like,
especially the tippy top, those are the ones that are under the biggest microscope. And this is just in general. Like if you get to I guarantee you, if you get to the point, or maybe you're at the point, you're the best person in this niche audience. And let's say there's 50,000 people that really like this niche and you're the head honcho in that niche, you're going to get the most criticism out of people in that
right,
group.
yeah.
Not because they don't like your stuff, but they have to
No, but
complain
it
and
comes
yours
down
is
to
the most popular.
popularity. There's gonna, no matter, this goes for anything. If you're at the top, you're gonna get some sort of, even a lot of criticism, no matter for what topic or what
Disproportionate.
subject
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
And I feel like that, in my opinion, that's the United States,
Mhm.
been the world superpower for 200 plus years. Like that is what you get being at the top because everybody's gunning for you. So now you have more. And have you ever, you might actually like this book, Ray Dalio, The Changing World Order.
I'm gonna put in a bookmark.
It's a thick book, so if you like Audible or something like that or an audio book, I would encourage you probably to listen to it because it's pretty dense.
I'll read a summary. I'm not gonna read that whole book. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a thick book, but one of the things that it says is it's historically most superpowers last about 250 years.
Yes, yeah, they do. Yeah, and I
And
heard that. I
and
heard it's been thrown around a lot.
and the United States is pushing 250 years old being, actually what is it? In 2 years from now, we'll be
Yeah, 2 years.
250 years old. So when you look at that and you start saying, okay, well, these other countries are building up, whatever. The problem is, any country that was in power, as they get more power, what happens? They get more responsibility. So it's like the US, like if there's conflict in the world, we see it now, the US, for some reason, is connected to that conflict. I mean, we're connected to two major conflicts that are happening across the globe because we're the United States of America. We have like you know what I mean in the sense
Yeah,
of I don't want to get like too political, but like it's two countries. We're not fighting on either side, but yet we're pulled in. Money's going to them. We're giving arms or weapons or whatever, So like we're still involved. Well, the problem is because we're that person, we're giving that actually hurts us in other things, which allows other people to climb up because we're too diversified. And I'm saying this in a very like if you said, hey, as you get more popular and more and big, you have more opportunities. And if you start doing more opportunities, what happens? You get spread too thin, and then you kind of like lose your edge. That's what happens to world superpowers. So I mean, we're seeing it play out right now, unfortunately. But when you go back in time and you see these, these people that are, you know, I mean, it's called, well, again, World War II. It's been like coined like the greatest generation. I mean, do you feel that when you talk to them that they live up to that?
Oh yeah, they're actual heroes. These people, they're fighting evil itself, against the Nazis, against Japan, against all sorts of evil. They're fighting against evil itself. These people have done so much, not just for their country, but for the entire world. And I appreciate them so much.
And Luke, you being, I mean, I know based on a lot of this stuff too, you're a history guy, but and you'll know this better than me for sure. World War II, what was let's say World War II didn't end the way it did. Like, what was on the line in World War II? Just for people to put it, I guess, in historical context. I have an idea. Obviously, it's been
What do you
years
mean?
since I've done
You mean
history.
what was on the line of?
What was on the line? What were we fighting for? Like, what was the whole conflict about? And obviously, the Allies won. But let's say the Axis won. Let's say, the roles reversed. The United States wasn't on the winning side. Like, what would the world look like today?
No,
Like,
it was,
basically, what did these people
well,
keep from happening?
Japan was trying to take over all of Asia, and Germany was trying to take over all of Europe, and they probably would they oh I know they would have expanded into they would have tried to take over in Hitler's second book, which was not published. He mentioned of taking on the United States like full on and conquering it. Oh, I don't know about conquering it, but he had plans for the United States,
Hmm.
which was not published, but it was in his second book. And Hitler wanted everything and he wanted the whole world. And the reason he lost because he like his what you kind of mentioned with the United States earlier. Not to make the comparison, but spreading your Hitler wanted so much. He was fighting so many fronts. He was taking on the whole world, which is why he lost. He took on everyone.
In a quick period of time, too.
Yeah, in a very short period of time. Yeah. And not trying to compare that to the United States, but going like thin
Well,
supply lines, and Germany barely had any allies too. Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and a few other puppets they had, along with the Japanese, but or the whole global way.
was Russia part of that at the time or no?
Russia
What
was
was
on yeah, the Soviet Union was on our side, yes, and they
I
they
thought? Okay,
contributed a lot, like a lot. They deserve more credit.
I was gonna say I thought they were. So when you, but I mean, realistically, when you talk about like I guess like the dictatorship. I don't was that considered communism back then
Well, Hitler was a fascist. Mussolini of
or
Italy was a
fascist?
fascist. Um,
Okay.
Japan, they had an emperor, but they also had a prime minister too. And then Hungary was fascist, and well, in the Soviet Union, they were communist, and the U.S. we
I mean,
had our
it
president.
was
Roosevelt.
yeah, it was basically the floodgates could have opened to the end of democracy throughout many countries throughout the world. I mean, that's really what you're fighting for. And I think what, it kind of comes back to why do you live in America? It's like, well, you do have the freedom to vote. Like you can go vote. You have a say. You can elect who you want to elect. I mean, there's a reason we have elected officials. There's a reason, like the whole system of government. Um, and the thing is, you go to these other countries and they tell you what to do. And
Yeah,
that's the thing. And I just go back to why are there so many, and this isn't an immigration border comment. This is more just in general, like people that have migrated here from whatever country throughout history. Like there's a reason the United States is a melting pot because people want to come to the United States.
mhm,
This is why you go to cities and there's so many different cultures. And I'm sure if you go to major cities, if you go to Tokyo, or if you go to Paris, or if you go, there's other major cities. I'm aware of that. But realistically, like so many people move here because of the opportunity they can have, the
oh
American
yeah.
dream. And I think that, you know, I think when people, especially Americans complain about America, I think a lot of it is unless you've lived somewhere else and you truly believe like that place is better and you're only here because against your wishes for whatever
Hold on,
reason,
you froze there.
then I think it's a very hypocritical thing to say, because a lot of it's out of context. Like you said, it's someone from a small town. Let's take someone from where, Shazy, you grew up. Let's say they're bashing the country. like all you've ever known is this. You don't even hate the country. You hate this one or two off things that, or something that
Yeah,
you're
you
seeing on the media that's
froze. I
being,
don't know if I froze on your
you know,
end. I don't know if you can even hear me. I
pushed
can't hear
out to
you.
have some type of narrative, and that's what you're basing everything off of. But I'm like, I guarantee if you go somewhere else, it's like you'd be like, oh crap, I really want the convenience of America. I want to be able to have my stores and restaurants and everything else.
I'll type in the chat.
Hey,
Okay,
Luke,
hello. There we are. Is it still recording? Good.
it is. Well, now it is. So, folks, sorry, but like I said, this is all new, and we live in a rural area, so we're fighting connections at all this time. But I don't know where I stopped, but I think there's a little bit of dead space.
I
So,
don't
hey,
even know the last. I don't know what you were talking about for the
I,
last
I, I
minute and a half.
yeah, I don't know how much. So I was just saying, like people that live locally, like I said, if you're complaining about something, we just kind of touched on it in America, but you're talking about a small, like this all you've ever known. I said it's probably not even the country. It's one or two things, and a lot of it might even be spun because you're getting it from a media source, or you're not seeing it firsthand. You're getting it kind of opinionated by somebody, and that's firing you up. And now you're like, America sucks, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, you have an issue with that. But I said, who's to say the grass is greener if you go to another country, even if you go up to Canada or if you go to Montreal or not Montreal, Europe. I mean, I love visiting Canada. I would much rather live in the United States. Like and nothing against Canada. That's just like having spent the time in Canada, I think it's cool to visit, but I'm
Oh
glad to
yeah.
come home. You know, and again, in Canada is probably a few countries in the world that most people from the United States would say I'd move to Canada, like because it's very similar,
Yeah, it's very
But
similar. Yeah, yeah.
so, but even just the small distinctions, I'm like I kind of like the way we do stuff, and like
Yeah,
it's maybe it's
it's
just
our
more
culture,
familiar.
how we've grown up, and it's what we're used to.
Yeah, so a lot of it was just the idea of like I think people need like I hope people can recognize that there's a lot of good stuff here, and that a lot of what the people that you're interviewing, a lot of what they're doing allows us to have this. Even like you can complain on 4th of July how bad America sucks, but you have that
But
right to do so.
yeah,
You know,
they have that freedom to do so in other
nobody's
countries.
going to silence you for saying
Yeah.
that. Like so, and I think people take that for granted. But again, it's all we've ever known. So like our threshold is very low in the sense of, if you go to somewhere else and you're just trying to survive, like, you can't even like speak freely in those countries. I mean, it's just like a totally different thing, and that's really not that far away if you think about it. You can get to all these places what in a day traveling on a plane.
Oh right, yeah.
Like it's nuts. And uh, but switching gears here, I want to dive into a couple things. Let's some topics here. So the honor flight, you got to do that back May
I love that.
2023.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I've had Barry on, and he obviously talked a lot about it and was great. But what was your experience just being? Were you a chaperone? I'm assuming.
No, I was an individual. I was invited as an individual, not as a chaperone, just as
Did,
an
but you got
individual.
to fly on. You got to actually fly
Oh yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. This was last May. I was a junior at Shazy, and I just loved it. I loved every second of it. We got to see all the memorials. I got to talk to a lot of the veterans. I got the full honor flight experience, and I love what the North Country honor flight does. And they do honor flights different in every state, in every county, not county, but every
Yeah,
region,
area,
every region
region.
in the state has a different one, even all over the country. But I think the North Country honor flight does the best. They have the ceremony. They bring we all these dignitaries like Dan Steck, Billy Jones, who show up to these ceremonies before they fly off, and they hundreds of people gather throughout the community to celebrate our veterans, and I love it. I love how they appreciate these veterans. And when it comes to the honor flight itself, going down to DC, DC is one of my favorite cities. I was just there a few weeks ago, but I think I go there once a year, but it gave me the chance personally to see a lot of these places that I haven't really got to see myself, like Arlington Cemetery. That was my
Hmm.
first time ever being up close to it, not just driving by it, or the World War II Memorial, actually, like um, or the Vietnam Wall. that's I actually got time to spend there instead of just like walking through it. I actually got time to absorb it, and it's a lot more meaningful when you're with these people who they're all their friends are on the wall and they're looking at them, and it's really sad. It really is, but it's a great experience, and I'm really happy what Barry Finnegan does and everyone else involved. They deserve a lot
Yeah.
of recognition. They do this 4 times a year. Where I live in Wilmington, I think they only do it once or twice, and it's completely different. I wasn't able to go to the one um, where I live currently, but I always was able to go to the ones in Plattsburgh. They do it
Well,
four
I think
times a year, and I love going to the ceremonies and then going to the actual flight in May of 2023. That was an experience I'll never forget.
I think it's like I said, I had Barry on it, and I think one of the cool things, and Barry had said it. He said theirs is one of the most successful. A lot of it is because of support, because it's all raised. They raise the money to do it. And it's not cheap to do those flights, and to do them as frequent as they do, um, is pretty impressive. But the thing is, too, with the honor flight, I still have never seen a ceremony live, like in person. I want to. It's just I got to plan better for it because usually I
It's
don't
early.
know
It's
when.
very early in the morning. I don't blame you.
Yeah,
It's
well,
very
it's not even the early thing. That actually works out well for me. It's just I flat out like don't ever put it on my calendar. Like and then they're
well,
like, oh, it's honor flight today. I'm like, crap, I missed it. Like it's one of those. I just got to put it on the calendar. But I think when I look at what goes into that and the amount of people that like plan on going and stop and become a part of it, and the bikes and the cops and the flags and the fire trucks, like there's hundreds and hundreds of people just to put these events on 4 times a year, and they all volunteer and do it. And again, I don't think this is coming from Barry, like you hear about it, like it's just a very, I think our community up here, and obviously you lived here for a time, like it's a very connected community. It's a community that I think, especially from a military perspective, I think is a very supportive community. Obviously, there's people that, served up here, and you see a lot of them walking around, what depending on, their age at this point. But, I think a lot of people and local businesses and people really help out, and you see a lot of fundraising for the honor flight. You see a lot of just little buckets and little change dishes, and you see these events that get put on just to give money to this. And I just think it's cool, the community support around it, because Barry said, he go, and you've obviously experienced this now going there and talking to these people, is that this means a lot to them to go do this, and it might be their only time ever to go on a plane ever again. um, and for a lot of these people, this is a chance, if they didn't have this, would never go. They wouldn't go on their own. And to have basically the red carpet rolled out, make it, being able to, make it accessible for a lot of these, elderly people to do this. I think it's the impact of it, in the area. But I said also, it's just like and it's not even for the people that are going. I mean, they obviously get something from it, but it's like the people like yourself, people watching it that, can kind of almost I think kind of transport themselves back to a time where I wasn't in war. But if I'm like, wow, like it's like a brotherhood, or whatever you want to call it, when you
you can
see
feel the
these guys.
patriotism there. You can feel the community is united when at those ceremonies.
Yeah, and
You
you
can
can,
really feel it.
and whenever you see like a reunion of anything, like it could be a reunion of, like, it could be a reunion of your favorite TV show, and you see all the actors are now 20 years older. You could like, or of a band or a winning sports team. When you see all these guys come together, and they're in their 90s or 80s or whatever, and they're all kind of going out, and you're like, holy crap! Like it's weird when if you've ever thought of, I mean, I get this now as I'm a little bit older. Like, if you ever think of or see something from a younger time, and you're gonna probably see this, 'cause I've been, well, what, I'm about 15-ish years older than you. Like, there's people now that I've seen that I was in high school with, that I see them now. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen you since high school. 15 years plus have passed, a little bit more than that now, probably, 16, 17 years have passed. And in my head, it's like, I do remember you. And like, now you're big, like you're older. But it's weird because time doesn't stop, doesn't slow down. And so a lot of this is when you see them all come back together, you're like, wow, at one point, these guys were like in this huge thing together as a team, as a collective, even if they didn't know each other, they kind of have this silent bond amongst each other. And I think there's a level of like respect and admiration when you see that of like, oh wow, like this is like really impactful seeing these people knowing what they went through and then just seeing there's a power of just being a collective unit. So when you see, let's say 20 or 30 of them together, you're like, wow, that speaks volumes, especially when they're showing each other respect and they're you can't relate to them because you didn't go through it, but they all can.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you
It's
were
it's
right about
wild.
that.
It's
Yeah.
what out of all the people that you've interviewed, who sticks out the most? Like who were you the most excited to get, or who do you think had the best interview that or most memorable to you?
Um, that's a very good question because I'm thinking about the reason I want to say the ex-KGB spy Jack Barsky is just because that was my first live and public interview. There was like 800 people there. That was like
Hmm.
most of my school was there, and I was very hyped up. And the news came along, and that was my first time ever doing so. So I'll always remember that because that was my first time doing it live. And uh,
And how old is he, Jack?
79, 78.
Okay.
And that was amazing. And I want to do more live interviews. I have a lot of fun doing them. If I can organize some when I'm at Cape Fear Community College, starting I start there in a month and a half. Oh my God. If I can find some guests to do that again, I would love to do that. But when it comes to my channel, um, probably want to say John Najia. He's a World War II veteran I interviewed over 2 years ago. And it was just during the interview, he just started crying, which that was my second mini documentary I made. My first one was about Tony Gagliardi. He was at Iwo Jima in Okinawa, and then John Agia, who was in Europe. Well, he was in France and Germany, and he had a lot of good stories, and they were very sad stories. They were very graphic stories. But during one of the stories, he started crying, and it was very sad seeing this. But I'll never forget that. He lives in Witherby, which is I think that's 3 hours away, 4 hours away from where you are, right?
Yeah, it might be. I mean,
2 hours.
Does that happen a lot?
I'm trying to think. Has
Emotional
another
stuff. I mean, for a
Oh yeah,
lot of
yeah.
the vets.
Yeah. I can tell like when there's like a. I'm not talking about when I was I can when there's like a pause. I'm not talking about like the awkward 5 second pause when I'm trying to think. When there's like a big pause when they're about to say a story, or you can see in their eyes when they're about to say something traumatic. Um,
Hmm.
when there's like I said, not talking about like when I said like the 100-year-old who's pausing because of he's trying to gather. So I was like when there's like a any veteran telling a story, and then there's pause, and then you can see in their eyes, and then the way their voice changes. Yeah, you can really notice that stuff and how it affects them after all these years, after all these decades, in fact.
What about like you said, some of the times there's like their families with them during the interviews. Like, do you find that a lot of the family members just get emotional just hearing it? Like, I
Yes.
would think if my grandfather was talking about something as a kid that was emotional to him, I'd get emotional.
Yeah, yeah. For sure, yeah. And like I said before, this is the first time a lot of them have heard these stories. A lot of are these veterans and historic witnesses. They've kept these stories to themselves, and these are the first time their family members are hearing them, and they didn't even know that they went through this or did through this, and the family members they're very grateful, uh, not just for that part, but also that their family member is on recording and they can view it anytime. Some of the veterans who have passed away, the family members are very grateful. That they got their probably the last recording of these people that they have. So I'm happy that I was able to make a difference in their family. I didn't even realize it until the first time it happened.
Was I was gonna say, I think like something that you look at obviously is like, hey, you're doing the interview, which is awesome, but I think a lot of it is where it goes from there and like what it does for others. Like I said, and I'm looking at some of these videos you have that have tens of thousands of people, or the one that has 100 and something thousand. I mean, that's a lot of people to watch a video, and I'm sure a lot of those people that are watching the video are getting something, whether it's moving or comforting or, um, like you said, kind of drop some weight off some people's shoulders. Like it's therapeutic. I mean, I think the videos go far beyond just the idea of like that was cool to interview that person to like some of these people that means a means a whole lot to them.
Yeah, you're right. It was when I first started this when I was 15, 16 years old. I didn't realize the big impact until maybe
Hmm.
the last year and a half or last 2 years. I didn't really notice the big impact of not just for the veterans, but their family members too, and all their friends and all the thousands of people who are potentially going to watch this video. So yeah, I didn't really realize it until recently.
Well, I think just having that historical account, that the orated account, that, and have you, have any of your interviews ever been used beyond your, like, have people, have, media companies asked to use it? Have people wanted to show it to people? Has it kind of like taken off and had like
Well,
other premieres in other
I
places?
think schools have shown my videos before, and yeah, I don't remember what schools, but they have shown some of my videos before for obviously educational purposes. I remember the first time I met Elisa Phonic, um, she wanted me to donate my video to the Library of Congress, which I considered. I just never got to it, and I might do it, I might not. I don't know anything more about it, but that just hearing that from a congresswoman, I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's a great suggestion. I think I want more people to see this and preserve these veterans and historical witnesses stories.
That's what I was wondering, because I mean, how many, and again, how many people, let's do this, if you, whether you know this or not, how many people interview veterans the way you do, just in general, just as a person, and then couple that with how many people roughly your age, and I would say plus or minus maybe 5 to 10 years, are doing what you're doing
Okay,
that you know of.
no, no, no. I'm glad you brought that up. Just because it's well, remind me. Okay, so the first question: how many people are doing the same way I'm doing it? There are a few channels who do interview veterans. I have a friend named Zach, and he lives in Canada, and he interviews Canadian veterans, and he's focusing on. Well, that's why I found him. I found him. I'm like, hey, there's someone who's the
Yeah.
Canadian version of me. Oh, that's cool. So, and then so I got in touch with him. He got in touch with me, and I'm like, we're kind of the same thing. I mean, his is more focused on like World War II Canadian veterans, while mine is just
Mhm.
military history in general. His is like a particular focus, and he's had some American veterans, the ones you can find, but he's more focused on Canadians. I focused on everybody. We have different topics, and I gave him some names. He gave me some names, and we're working together when we can. But he's older than me. He's in his 20s, but that's not. I'll be 20 next year, so. But he's older. He's older though. Um, but people my age, or even okay, there's other YouTubers who interview veterans
Well,
too.
and I would even
Um,
say his age, because in my mind, I'd say anybody like, are people interviewing, they might be in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I would even think of someone in their 30s doing the interviews are pretty young. So I'm just saying in general, like you said, there's a few channels, but um, yeah, I would say someone like, if this guy's even 27, I still think that's young considering that these people are all, 70 years older than him
oh right,
and
yeah.
older than you. Yeah.
But when it comes to people my age, and there's more people who than adults think that there's more teenagers and people my age who are actually interested in history and all this military stuff. They don't realize that I know a lot of people my age who are interested in that stuff, and but the way they approach it is differently. They're just interested in the topic, and then we'll start talking about like I don't know Vietnam. Like oh, I got a Vietnam veteran who might talk to you. It's like oh we don't. They kind of shy away from it. They don't want to talk to the veteran themselves. Or like I met a friend yesterday, um, and I was talking with him just the other day, and he's like, oh I never met a World War II vet in my entire life. I hope to do so. And I'm like I can make that happen for you. And he's like I don't know I don't know how I would talk to him. I don't know how to talk to these kinds of people. So it's and just small different things like that or I don't know I have another friend and he's interviewing veterans but that's it's for a Boy Scout project. It's not because he wants to yeah he's interested in history. He likes our veterans and military but it's not like a volunteer. He's just doing it to get for his project. And I'm sure I know he appreciates our veterans but he's doing it a different way. He has a select bunch of questions and it's for Boy Scouts. It's not for it's a whole separate thing. And there's more people my age are trying to think of who are doing similar stuff. No, I can't really think of that. A lot of them take interest in military history, or they at least have a knowledge about it. But when it comes to firsthand accounts, they're not as interested in that kind of stuff. And when I noticed journalists interviewing veterans for like the 80th anniversary of D-Day, or like 4th of July, or Veterans Day, or let's say it was like the 50th anniversary to the end of the Vietnam War. That's just a random example. You'll see on the news how they're interviewing them. I don't know. Some of them approach it wrong. They don't really they don't have the historical knowledge of what questions to ask some of these people. But I noticed like when I see them on the news, just because they don't specialize in history. They specialize in just general media, which I've noticed that
Well,
not too many times, just a few times I've noticed that.
and well, Luke, I wanted, just for the sake of time here, I want to go through a few questions so I kind of know whether or not you want to do kind of like a rapid fire or kind of expand. I think I got like six more here. Um, so your first one talked about the 80th anniversary of D-Day in France, the last living World War II veterans. Is that something you personally went to?
Oh yeah, I was at Gold Beach. I was not at Omaha, but that's where all the dignitaries and all the world leaders and generals and senators they were there. I wasn't able to go to Omaha, but I was at Gold Beach. This was yeah a month ago. Month ago, yeah. June
How
the
far are those two apart?
few miles, but there's so much traffic, it doesn't feel like it. It's probably more than a few miles. I don't know, but no, that was one time I'll never forget that experience. I met so many good people from all around the world. I never seen that many American flags in my entire life. Surprisingly, with all the Fourth of
Really?
July
Oh,
parades or the Veterans Day events, I've seen more American flags in Normandy, France, than I've ever seen in any American military event ever. Um, and I thought I was going to meet maybe dozens of World War II veterans. I've only met about seven who are over there. It was sad. Yeah, most of them are at Omaha Beach, but I think maybe only 200 D-Day veterans are left. But when it comes to, I don't know how much World War II veterans themselves show up to the anniversary of D-Day, but I only met about seven, including a French veteran. That was my first ever World War II French veteran I met. And what I know is the cultural difference is I don't know how they treat the veterans over in France because I went to thank him for his service and he almost started crying. He didn't speak English, but he understood what I was saying, and the person I was with telling me how thankful he was for just me thanking him. And I don't think he's ever been thanked for his service before. And he didn't have a veteran cap. I just saw a really old guy with a bunch of medals I've never seen before. So I wanted to go talk to him, and I found out, oh, this guy fought under Charles de Gaulle in North Africa, and during World War II. And we don't get stories like that ever. And I would love to interview French veterans and all sorts of other veterans from World War II who are from other points of view. And it was very emotional for him that I don't think he's ever got thanked for his service. I don't know how they treat their veterans over there, but it meant a lot to him that I thanked him for his service.
so, and I'm just looking at a map here. Um, so Normandy is pretty much northern France, kind of like right on that middle peninsula, inside, or I guess kind of east of the middle peninsula. So you were on which beach, you said?
In Gold Beach. The next day, I was able to go to Omaha and Utah, but during on the day of the anniversary, I wasn't able to.
So
There's so much
everybody,
traffic.
so they landed on Omaha Beach
The
is the
Americans did. The British landed at Gold Beach.
oh, the British okay, I got you. So
Yeah.
um now what I'm looking at, I mean it's a small area right now. Omaha Beach.
Oh, but there was so many people there. Oh my God, it
But I
was
mean
so.
like normally like day to day, is it pretty low population?
Oh, um, it's not. Yeah, I would say it's not below average, but normal-ish. It's not
And obviously again, I'm looking at
normal-ish.
photos here, like a lot has been built up. So back then like these little towns weren't around. These buildings that are along the coast, like they weren't there.
Yeah, it's not a city there or anything like that. No, not at all. It's just
But
like I'm not
but
town
but
wise.
even like I'm looking at a map right now, when you look at, like, you go down to like a Google view, like right on Omaha Beach, like basically this road that goes down Bernard and Quatil. It's like the road that pretty much goes right down the beach. But I'm saying like this beach isn't that big. I'm assuming all that property right there was just beach at the time, wasn't built up. Obviously, I'm looking like
Oh yeah,
zooming
I'm
in, I can
sure
see
it was
houses.
probably just beaches and bunkers at that time, 80 years ago.
Yeah, so it's like it's kind of weird. Like this, where the battles actually happen is now someone's like kitchen.
Yeah,
You know.
right.
I mean, yeah, you're just like looking at like the physical ground, like it's just been built up, which is crazy to think about because you go through, historical, and again, this goes back to the time thing. Like you're talking, what, 80 years ago this happened, so you're not even at 100 years in history, and like unless you knew that was the beach, like it doesn't resemble the war zone because like just again, time doesn't stop, so things just keep getting built up. same way you go back like in history, like what was it like around the pyramids when they were built? Like what did the area look like? Like,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
if you ever go down and like zoom in on the pyramids, like to the like corners down is McDonald's. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like it's like such a bizarre thing, but like um but um now I can say at the because I saw the stuff for D-Day, like people like kind of the old veterans like kind of wheelchairing out on the beach. Um so that was just something you wanted to do on a whim, or was that just
Well, I wanted to go to the Normandy landing sites for years. COVID kind of ruined that plan, and then it got brought up uh, last year. Um,
it was just because it was the 80th, that's why you wanted to go?
well, so American Military News. They did an article about my YouTube channel, and then some organization reached out and they brought up the idea of going to the 80th anniversary D-Day, but they wanted me to help out with them. They wanted me to say, hey, in springtime, maybe we can work something out. I'm like, okay, there's a flight on to Florida, we'll figure something out. Then I'm thinking like, all right, it's not that cut and dry. I can't just like, you know, go down to Florida and help you guys out. I just can't do that. But them alone bringing up the 80th anniversary of D-Day just made me think again. Like, oh right, I've been wanting to go to the Normandy landing sites. This will be the perfect time to go there because it's the 80th, and this is the last time what's ever going to happen, like for at least a big event. Um, 80 years, plus 18. These World War II veterans, they're 98 years old to 100 years old. At youngest, 98.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's probably like I mean for you once in a lifetime at this point because it's
It
like
is,
there's
yeah.
just it's never going to happen again. Um so just a couple like I said, answer these kind of I guess rapid style, but you said I want to meet and interview all sides of history no matter who they are and how controversial or dangerous they are. Is there any that I guess from a controversial or dangerous perspective, because then the second one you had down was people have mixed reactions about some of the people that you have interviewed. Who's someone or a couple people that you want to interview that would be what you would consider controversial or dangerous, and then which guest so far has elicited the most uh, polarizing or mixed reactions that
Well,
you've interviewed so far?
okay, so um, when it comes to more, okay, how do I word this? Well, I mentioned Blackwater before, and it's
Hmm.
almost impossible to find a Blackwater guy who can talk. Or let's say I want to find more ex KGB agents. I've had obviously ex CIA spies on my channel. I had a few of them, but there's I can only find I can only find other two other KGB guys who would well former KGB agents who would actually respond, and I think only one of them said he might do, and the other one hasn't responded yet. But other people, or even like the other side of history, I want to interview German World War II veterans. I really do. I want to hear their point of view. As messed up the Germans were during World War II, I want to hear their side of it. You got to remember a lot of these Germans who are these the ones who are at least living now, who are 98 to 100 years old. They were my age. They're forced to be there. These are not like SS soldiers. These are poor 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids who are drafted. I want to hear their point of view on this. And
Yeah.
um, well, I did meet a Hitler Youth lady, former Hitler Youth member, about 2 years ago, but she passed away, sadly. And well, she talked to me. We met a few times, but I didn't want to. I just didn't
You,
interview her on the channel. I wish I
she
did, but
was she was German.
yeah, she was German, and it's not her fault. She was there because her father wanted her to be there, and people got
Hmm.
to understand that they're forced to be there. It's not a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them were bad, but she was 10 years old. It's not her fault that she was forced to be a part of this. And I want to find who are some other people. This one's not really controversial, but it's more interesting. So I interviewed someone, a Cuban rebel who was at the Bay of Pigs. I haven't
Hmm.
uploaded that interview yet, too, but hearing his point of view, that well, the Bay of Pigs is not as cut and dry as the movies make it or history books tell it or how we learn about it. So much went down that no one really talks about. And hearing his experience. Oh, and I thanked him for his service too, even though he's not like he's a rebel fighter. It's weird to think a rebel fighter, but he's on our side fighting against communism. So I thanked him for what he did, and he really appreciated that because I don't think he's ever been appreciated for his fight against communism. And I want to find more people like that. It's just that where can I find them? That's the thing. It's been almost impossible to find them, and I want to branch out. There's this branch out from my channel. For example, I have a friend, Anthony Arlotto. He's a former mafia hitman, and I want to have him on my channel. And he said he'll do it. He just wants to get to know me more. So when I get to know him, I'll have him on my channel. And he's writing a book right now, which is why he can make this public. It's not like it's not,
Well, yeah, I mean, you wrote down him. You wrote down Sergey Jernov.
yeah, he's an
Who,
ex-KGB guy. I have him on LinkedIn.
I mean, wasn't Putin a KGB spy
Yeah,
at one point?
I think that guy knew Putin. Yeah, that guy.
And then obviously you have retired U.S. Lieutenant General James Dubik.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I met him in DC, and he has well, he's just not a lot's going on right now, and he's not available. So I haven't spoken to him in maybe 7 months, or I haven't emailed him. So I'll check in again. I'm glad you brought that up because I'll check in again to see if he's available.
yeah, I mean, I look at some of these. Obviously, a lot of these are beyond. I mean, I know roughly, but you have way more context. But um, yeah, CIA spies, the ex-Cuban mercenary or rebel mercenary, Medal of Honor
Oh yeah,
recipient, Sean.
mercenaries. If I can, yeah, if I can find more mercenaries, that'll be interesting to talk to about because it's well, a lot of them are veterans. First of all, second of all, they're there for a different purpose. They're there, they're not there to they're paid professional soldiers. It's not like they're fighting for a country. They're fighting for money really. So that's
Mhm.
an interesting take. But kind of go back to Blackwater guys. But I've met other mercenaries. But it's hard for get them. It's hard to get them to talk. Really, it really is.
I was gonna say a lot of, like I said, it's a sensitive topic, like you talk about. Like it's not, it's not like you're interviewing someone that just has like made a movie or just
Right,
like
right,
an
yeah,
entertainer. Like these people like had major impacts and ramifications on a global scale
right.
at a real level where, yeah, I think even at some point, like even talking at this point might be considered somewhat compromising something, because I feel like a lot of these people take stuff to the grave because they just like they don't want to be tied in or get their name back in the news or in the public or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
them, especially the older they're trying to get their name. They're trying to not. They're trying to just
like
avoid this
wash
stuff.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so last question I want to ask, who's the person you would love to have the most on your channel?
the most of my channel.
Like,
Okay, that's.
do you have a top wish list of like this is like the big whale that I'm chasing?
Hold on, let me try to think that.
Or in a
Um,
perfect world, if I said, Luke, if you could interview anybody on your channel, no strings attached. If you sat them, they would
I'd
interview.
probably go the most controversial one. Probably like an African warlord or like some like dictator. Like I'm being serious. That like really that would that'd be a very interesting interview to hear their
I mean,
mindset of what they're doing, what and why they're doing this.
but I mean,
And
if you said like obviously like in a historical current time context, like you could take a world leader, you could take like Putin, obviously who's
oh
in
yeah,
the
there's
news. You
one.
could take
Okay, one person. Yeah. So Imelda Marcos, because well, I have a direct connection to that family.
okay,
But
and who's that person?
she was the former first lady of the Philippines. Her husband was a dictator of the Philippines, and her son's the current president of the Philippines. And I don't even know if she's with it or not, but she's one person I would love to interview. She just turned 95 recently, but I have no way of even especially that her son's a president now of that country. It's going to be impossible to even get in touch with her now.
And that's of the Philippines.
Yeah, the Philippines. I'm
What?
Filipino, so
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that
yeah.
would be the ties to that.
Well, my dad's side of the family had some ties over there a long time ago.
But I mean, for you right now, that's being that being the person you'd want to interview is because of your ties to the Philippines.
Not, yeah, I'll keep it as that.
Okay.
There's,
Well, I
there's,
didn't know because
no,
I've
no,
never
no,
heard of her, so I didn't know if it was part of
no,
like
no,
U.S.
no,
history.
there's a bigger story to it, but
That's
there's a
right,
whole bigger story that
but
I have a
there's
con-
tie to it that you have interest in.
yeah, yeah.
Um, well, that's cool. So, well, Luke, we'll wrap it up here. Tell people the channel. We should have this earlier, but tell people the name of the channel, how they can find you, and if anybody had, I guess, any leads for future stories that that you could look at, how can they get those to you?
Okay, well, my YouTube channel is Filmperia. So Filmperia. You can look that up on YouTube. If you want to contact me, you can email me at lukeb.filmperia@gmail.com. And if you just want to email me, if you have someone who you can relay to me, I'd love for them to do that. I love reaching out to people who love history. If you just want to talk to me about this kind of stuff, I love to have conversations with people about history and military affairs and current events. I love all that kind of stuff. And if you have someone I can interview probably on Zoom, just because that's easiest, or in person if I'm back up in uh, upstate New York. I don't know when I was just there, so I don't know when I'm going to go back up there again. Um, but no, that was nice being back up there after a year. But yeah, my YouTube channel is Filmperia, and I don't know what else to add.
No, that's good. That's fine. We'll put some stuff in the show notes too, but
All
we'll do
right,
Filmperia, the email. But yeah, like I said, for people to check out the YouTube channel, there are quite a bit of I mean, a wide variety of people that are on there. I'll leave it at that. People can kind of peruse themselves, but you've done a lot of videos. Obviously, many of them have, I'm sure at this point you have hundreds of thousands of views of different stories and stuff that you've done. So, well, Luke, I appreciate you coming on, and like I said, I wish you luck in tracking down some of those wish list people that you can get on, and just kind of keep growing
well,
this thing because I
I
think it's
try a lot. I found Idi Amin's his son is here, his grandson on LinkedIn. I haven't contacted him yet, but he was the dictator of Uganda, and his son is still out there, or his grandson. So I'm gonna try to make contact with him.
yeah. Hey, the what is it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I think just sending out some outbound stuff will get you on things. So,
Yeah.
um,
What they can say is no or don't respond, which has happened for a lot of these people,
yeah,
which is
it's all
okay.
good. Just keep
Yeah.
chipping away. Like I said, yeah, you'll track down quite a bit of people. So,
Some interesting.
um, I was gonna say you have more interesting guests for sure on your channel than most. So, all right, we'll wrap it up there. That is episode 269 of the Galen Trombley Show. We're out.
All right. Thank you, Galen.
Thank you for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on all social platforms at Galen Trombley. Thanks for listening.